Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We're recording our podcast for our EPHE143 assignment based on three different research topics that we're going to discuss today. We're going to do a little introduction first and then we'll get started. So I'm Shara. I'm a second year undergraduate student at UVic. My interest in this course comes from my personal experience as a retired competitive dancer. And my area of study is public health and social work.
Okay, I'm Jordan. I'm Jordan Pichette, and I'm a second year BCom student. And although business, you might be like, oh, business doesn't seem related, but in my pastimes, I like to work out all the time, and yeah, I'm really focused on dieting and health.
Hi everyone, I'm Ahmad. I'm a first year kinesiology student at UVic. I've always been interested in how the human body works, and as someone who plays basketball and soccer recreationally, I'm I'm passionate about the human body.
Awesome. So as everyone can see, we have a diverse group with different backgrounds, interests, majors, etc. So we're excited to share our research topics with you. Jordan, do you want to get us
All
started?
right, okay, thanks, Shira. So my research topic is mental health and exercise in young adults, and my research question was, does exercise in young adults improve anxiety and depression? So I chose this topic because that's a very common thing amongst college students, especially in like today's world where people are more indoors and don't go outside as much, so they're like doom scrolling and they're on their phone like 8 hours a day. So the goal of this study was to whether see aerobic exercise. So this is not like regular working out, but it's like, you know, aerobics and also mindfulness meditation, and to see if it could reduce anxiety, stress, and depression. So they had 32 college students between the ages of 18 and 30 who were mostly female, and they divided them into three groups. So they had a control group, a group that did mindfulness meditation, and a group that did both aerobic exercise and mindfulness meditation. Participants completed three supervised sessions per week. The researchers measured stress, anxiety, and depression using two mental health questionnaires called the Perceived Stress Scale and the Depression Anxiety Stress Scale. Okay, so the results showed that both the exercise and mindfulness group and the mindfulness group itself both had reductions in stress, anxiety, and depression compared to just the control group. Although they were not statistically significant, it was still a small sample size, so every improvement was still meaningful. Overall, this article is relevant to my research question because it suggests that exercise, especially when combined with mindfulness, which I did not think about in my question, it was just exercise, may help reduce anxiety and depression in young adults, and could be used as a strategy to support mental health in college students.
Ahmed, do you want to go ahead with yours?
My research question explores how smartphone use affects cognitive function, specifically attention, memory, and executive function in young adults aged between 18 to 25 years old. I chose this topic because our generation grew up with technology, and I've always been like wanted to know how how our screens actually affect our brains. So the article I'll be discussing today is by Wax and Weinstein from 2021, published in the Frontiers in Psychiatry. So their review looked at the existing evidence on how smartphones affect us both physically and mentally. What I found was relevant to my research was their findings on cognitive function, specifically impaired attention, reduced inhibitory control, lower working memory, and even physical changes in the brain. Like the physical changes, especially like the gray matter, the volume reduces in like your head, in your brain, and the gray matter is responsible for decision making and emotional processing, which is pretty important in like this in young adults. So they
Yeah, it's
found it
great.
was linked to depression and anxiety and poor sleep and reduced physical fitness. What makes this article strong is that it pulled together 84 different studies, so the evidence is broad and consistent.
Okay, I will go ahead. So, my research topic looks at using a biopsychosocial framework, looks at how experiences during PE during elementary and secondary school may or may not impact long-term participation in physical activity. So I wanted to explore this topic because like one of the first things that Dr. Smith talked about like at the beginning of the course was just how tremendous the drop off is for youth once like PE isn't a required course anymore. And I think that's like grade 10 or 11. I can't remember now. And especially for females, but we also know how like critical physical activity is for human beings, generally speaking. So it's concerning. And then you have all of those additional factors like smartphones and like stress and all of those things that are distractions and or inhibitors to uh, performing physical activity. So I wanted to sort of understand like how or if the PE experience could change how somebody developed habits for like the long term. So the article I found that was the most sort of relevant to the topic was a study that was done. They used quantitative and qualitative methods to determine current physical activity levels for undergraduate students over a year-long period. They basically determined their MET score, and then they were asked a series of questions, specifically 3 questions around experiences in physical activity. So the findings were really interesting. One specific question was, have you ever had the experience of being picked last for the team when you were in PE? And 31% of there was 239 participants responded that yes, they had been picked last for the team. And those individuals actually had like a decrease or had a lower MET score by like 7.7, which is pretty material per week. So, and this was evident in more females than males. So, I think there's something there for sure. And I'm actually, I do actually want to do some further, particularly because when I'm doing my undergraduate degree in public health, I think it'll be really interesting to explore this sort of topic further to understand how we can change behaviors for youth based on like educational opportunities. So within school. So yeah, there's my.
That was pretty interesting because I can relate to like getting picked last. It's kind
Yeah.
of a thing that happens because I was a little I was a little chunky when I was that age in like grade 9 and 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting picked last is definitely something that sits with you. No one likes it. No one likes getting
Mhm.
picked last.
So moving to our next section, we're going to pose some questions to each other. How do you think that the findings from the article might might be different or advanced from 2021 when the study was originally done to today, now, like the advances in AI and tech generally?
I think if the research was done today, the findings would be stronger. Wax and Weinstein already flagged serious cognitive mental health consequences back in 2021. But since then, we've seen like a rise in AI in social media platforms where like they just get you hooked on the scrolling and scrolling, and algorithms are just built to keep you on that app. All of that would probably boost like the already negative effects it has on your brain. They also noted that most studies they reviewed were cross-sectional, meaning they couldn't fully prove causation in today's research methods. My other question is, did any of your articles look at whether the type of physical activity in PE, like team sports versus individual activities, make a difference in the long-term participation?
So the article, what it did touch on was specifically to do with the sort of like group mindset of the negative experience. So they associated like the being picked last for the team also with like levels of popularity, for example. So the negative experience wasn't necessarily because you were the worst, like
Yeah.
at the physical activity component of the PE exercise. It was
Mhm.
about sort of like the whole experience of being left out or not feeling like a loser, like all those kind of associative aspects. So in this case, the sports, like the team sport component, was the component that was explored as opposed to like the individual activity component.
Okay, yeah. So my question to Shira is, do you think the way PE classes are structured today could be changed in order to make physical activity more inclusive for students who are not the biggest fan of team sports?
Yeah, I definitely do. So, one of the biggest gaps that I see is that while I do think that there is a important aspect of PE and learning all of the traditional like sports and having that be one part of the curriculum. I think one of the things that like we're, at least I was, and I see young people today as well, like are woefully underprepared for like what types of physical activity, um, opportunities are like available after high school. So if you're already after high school having to figure out how to be an adult and go to university and like, or you're working and you've got a million things going on, and if you were never really taught how to use gym equipment, if you were never really yoga was not something that you were very familiar with, like trying to go to your community center and join a yoga class or figuring out like learning how to use the equipment at the gym, like all that stuff can be pretty intimidating. Um, so I think that putting those opportunities, like giving more of a well-rounded curriculum with things that are actually stuff that we do as adults, like we actually physically activity participate in, as adults, and teaching that at an earlier age would potentially be an opportunity for increasing future engagement with physical activity, because you're taking away that sort of having to learn it at a later point, right? It's already a behavior because you've been doing it at school.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look into, because you go to PE class and you just sports, basketball, soccer, they don't really include stuff like stretching, yoga,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something that could be implemented, and it definitely would see a positive change.
Mm-hmm. I think the other question I had for you was also just to do with like, I noted in your study that they had specifically like scheduled the times for the individuals to go practice the mind. Like it was guided, like whatever it was, like 3 days a week or something. Like, so I'd be curious to know like what the impact would have been like had they had to sort of self-direct.
Yeah, I think it's good that it was a structured environment because it helped participants stay more consistent with the program. Whereas if the sessions were not supervised, participants might have like slacked off or not be held like checked and balanced to make sure that they were doing everything correctly, and that would have led to the study to be less effective.
Thanks for sharing, Jordan. It's some really interesting stuff. And I also have a couple questions for you. My first is, your topic looks at aerobic exercise and mindfulness together. So I'm curious whether the research suggests one is more effective than the other for stress reduction, or is it just the combination that makes a difference?
Yeah, based on the study, both mindfulness and exercise help reduce stress and anxiety. However, the researchers suggest that both combining the exercise and also the mindfulness meditation provides additional benefits. So exercise can especially improve mood, reduce stress hormones, and also increase endorphins. So while mindfulness alone works better than just like what the study group did, which was nothing, the combination of both is more effective overall.
So let's decide on which article we want to proceed it with for the next part of our project.
I think my article had a strong methodological quality, because like it reviewed 84 different studies, which is a considerable amount. However, I feel like Jordan's article was the only one where an actual experiment took place, because they used control groups, which is like, I mean, if you have a control group, it's like more advantageous, like for getting a conclusion to a research.
Yeah, I agree with Ahmed there. Like for my article, it has a control group, so that's always good for studies. But I also really like Ahmed's since it has 84 different studies. So that's just a broader reach and there's more information on the study. So yeah.
Totally. Like I think that my article had a lot of limitations to it, so I would rule out mine, just because it was so specific, and I don't think it gives us enough of a kind of platform to work from for the next part of our assignment. I thought the research methods were well used, or they did qualitative and quantitative study methods, but I do think it was too limited. But if I look at the two of yours, I think that the vast amount of information from being able to look at like these findings from 84 different studies makes the smartphone usage one really compelling. Yeah, so I think our original sort of discussions and conclusions around that stand. And if we're all comfortable with it, then we will proceed with the smartphone study as our next project choice. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. See you later. Bye.